Ooh, look at all the pretty butterflies in the sky. I guess I'll just cross the street here.
Oh, good. Light's green. I'm glad I can go. Oh my gosh, watch out.
Sergeant, be safe, beast mode, baby! Megan, watch out for that car! I got you.
Oh, geez. I didn't even see that car coming.
Oh my gosh, are you two okay?
Yes, we're okay. Megan, you have to do a better job paying attention.
I just wanted to cross the street.
I didn't see you walking there.
Megan, you just can't cross in the middle of the street. You have to go to the intersections and use the proper crosswalks. Wait for traffic to clear and then go. If you don't follow these simple directions, you could get a ticket for jaywalking, or worse, be hit by a car and seriously injured.
I'll be more careful from now on. Ooh, look at the other butterfly.
Oh my goodness.
Sergeant Be Safe, you are the best.
This is very true. Thank you very much. I did have to turn on supersonic beast mode to jump and get Megan out of the way. Remember, folks, look both ways before crossing the street and wait till the intersection's clear and cross at the crosswalks. And that's your tip of the day to get you on your way.
Welcome to Black and Blue, the podcast that's just for you. We bring solutions to everyday problems. We are here to humanize the badge. By interviewing first responders and discussing their trainings, experiences, and publications. Black and Blue airs weekly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tune in.
Let's go start the show. And we are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome back to the doubleheader. We went live yesterday and we are live again today. We had two dynamic individuals. One yesterday, Chad Bruckner. We had his story. We talked about his book. Now we're live today with Ernest Stevens, and we're going to jump all into all that. I'm your host. I'm your motivational speaker, your empowerment coach, your author, and your favorite baker's favorite baker. I'm Coach Clee, and this is Black and Blue. This is the podcast where we interview individuals, first responders, and law enforcement officials, whether they're rookie, seasoned, or retirees. And when we interview them, we talk about their trainings, their experiences, and their publications. And we go live weekly. We go live weekly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we have a lot of fun doing it. And this one's not going to be another barn burner. We're going to have a lot of fun today. Got to put a few announcements out there. This show is sponsored by One Way Publishing. One Way Publishing is also, you see the website scrolling below, workwithclee.com. It's a book publishing company. I've used them. I got a couple of my 5 books behind me. They also have their clients' books. Their motto is they can turn a mere thought into a book that's bought. So if you ever wanted to write a fiction, nonfiction, children's book, cookbook, whatever it may be, they're who you want to go through. Reach out to them. They're also the sponsor of Sergeant Be Safe. You got to see one of the cartoons that was featured here in the beginning. We'll also have more going throughout the rest of this interview, all right? But again, we're streaming on 5 different platforms. We're on 5 different platforms. And yesterday, I know the 2 Facebook platforms, there was a connectivity issue. That's since been taken care of. So the show has been uploaded on the Coach Clee page and the Black and Blue page on Facebook. We're also on 2 pages on YouTube and 1 page on LinkedIn. So I say all that to say I cannot see who's on here. We are live. This is interactive. So if you're looking for your shout out, make sure you put your name and where you're from in the comment section. We'll give you the shout out that you're looking for. If you have a question, make sure you put your question in the comment section and we'll address it accordingly. Okay. Understand there's about a 5 to 10 second delay from the time that you post it to the time that we see it. So we'll address it accordingly. All right. But again, make sure that you guys tag, like, share, and subscribe to this information because we're going to have a lot of fun. See one comment coming through. Let me go ahead and get on the right page. Love the vest. Thank you. Making fun. I understand they were making fun of my vest yesterday. That's a whole nother inside story that we won't talk about. We got a wonderful guest here. Some of you may know him, have seen his publications. You may have seen his book that's on Audible. You may have seen him on TV. He's got the HBO special. He's a retired law enforcement officer with over 28 years of service. He's a deputy director of CSG at the Mental Health Unit Center. I'm sorry, fumbling over my words. He's also been featured on Nightline. He's also been on NBC's a Different Kind of Force. He's also received the Emmy Award for his HBO Crisis Cops. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'm going to bring him to the stage because that's why we're all here. Ernie Stevens. Ernie, are you there?
Coach Clee, man, I'm here. You got me fired up, ready to go, man. Loving it.
Perfect. I see you got one year saying Ernie and Clee are awesome. Thank you for tuning in. Tag like it's your steady piece here. Good evening, Coach. Good evening to you too. Thank you guys for tuning in. And we, like I said, we do have an awesome guest. Let me get his banner up here. But while I get everything situated, Ernie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I can. But you know what? Let me start out real quick, Coach Clee. I just saw that banner that's going across where you said, if you need help with a book, man, I got an idea for a coloring book. So I'm going to get with you. I want to get with you on that, get a coloring book going. But also Chad Bruckner, man, you elevated his voice yesterday. Friend of mine, I've read his book. Good guy. Mm-hmm. I really appreciate you using this platform to elevate those voices that can move the needle and continue to change the culture. So I love what you're doing here. When you reached out, it was a complete honor, a super easy yes to spend time with you and your listeners tonight. So I want to have a good time, make this very interactive. My name is Ernie Stevens. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. My law enforcement career really spans almost 30 years, 28 years with the San Antonio Police Department. I guess the thing that I'm most proud of my time with the San Antonio Police Department was getting the opportunity to form a mental health unit, which came to fruition back in 2008. Now, prior to that, I'd been to the training in 2003, and that's a whole nother story because I didn't even want to go to the training. But I spent 28 years there, retired in 2021, and then joined the Council of State Government's Justice Center as the Deputy Director for Law Enforcement. So now I get to help agencies all across the United States set up co-responder units, anything really that touches law enforcement at all that has Department of Justice dollars attached to it in a grant. We get the honor and the opportunity to help those agencies out.
Gotcha. Yes. And thank you absolutely for tuning into the other shows. And yesterday's show was very fun to do, and I don't mind. This platform is needed to get this information out there, the show personality, humanize the badge, and show trainings and publications. And I know that you don't fall short from that. I know that you're very elevated in the community and nationally. Let me ask you, what gave you the bug to actually want to get into law enforcement? What was that burning desire that you had?
Oh man, it started a long time ago. I got my first badge in the 5th grade when I was a patrol. I got to hold that heavy ass stop sign and help people cross the street, kind of like Sergeant Be Safe, man. So yeah, but in all seriousness, growing up and throughout high school, wherever I was working, there seemed to be like an off-duty officer. Always there, and it always got to build a relationship and talk to them about their day to day. And what they said was, well, no day is the same. Every day is different. I'm like, well, that's what I'm talking about. The hardest thing was waiting until I turned 21 to be able to apply for a police academy. So, it seemed like a noble profession. The men and women I met in uniform always carried themselves at very high esteem, but always took time to talk to me as an adolescent. My law enforcement teacher in high school really was instrumental. He was a retired San Antonio police sergeant and then took on a job as an educator and then taught law enforcement at my high school. And that really, truly was the selling point. He made it sound fun and sexy and left all the part out about all the report writing and all the internal affairs investigations that go on with part of the job.
Isn't that always convenient, though?
Yeah, but in all seriousness, like he truly was a mentor for me in my life.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. And so you said you went to your first training for mental health and EQ and all the buzzwords that are going on right now. 2003, correct?
Yeah. So Houston actually came down to San Antonio to put on a training. And Coach, I was assigned to the tactical response unit, which we were paired with the gang unit. So we were a proactive unit that went out in high crime areas to look for guns, drugs, weapons, crime, violent crime, and try to get that reduced in those areas of town. Well, it happened to be my day off, and they put out this training memo for crisis intervention training. Well, my partner thought it'd be a good idea to sign me up for it because you got to remember, right? When you work nights overnight and you get to go to a training for a week, you get to sleep in your bed at night for a whole week. You get the weekend off prior to the training. So it really didn't matter what training came around. You signed up for it. Yeah. But when I came back to work and I was told, hey, you're going to CIT training next week, I was like, I've never heard of it. What is that? And they said, well, it's crisis intervention training. And I'm still trying to put two to two together in my mind. I'm like, is that like an anti-terrorism class? Is the FBI teacher like, what is this thing? And they're like, well, it's a class about how to identify somebody in a mental health crisis, how to de-escalate, and then how to divert for proper resources. And I said, well, take me out. Like, that's not my thing. I don't want to have nothing to do with that. I don't know anything about that. We didn't, back in the 90s when I went through the police academy in 92, we didn't get any training on mental health response. I only knew what I knew from television, but it was too late. My name had already been turned into accounting and I was stuck like Chuck, man. And I had to go to the training. I didn't have a choice.
And that was a turning point for you. Lo and behold, I know, like you said, you tried to get out of it, but that's something that became a pivot for you.
Coach, that truly was an aha moment in my career. Now you have to think I'd already been an officer at this point about 15 years, very set in my ways. So day 1, day 2, day 3 of the training went exactly like I thought, all these PowerPoints and development of the brain and psychopharmacology, medicate, like I was just not having it. I was like, and then all the role playing, right, that goes along with this kind of training.
I remember that. Yeah.
It's like, God, man, get me out of here. What day is it? Help. But then Thursday rolled around and a lady from the community who was a member of NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, she came and she spoke to us, a group of strangers, a group of cops, about her son, her adult son that had mental illness. And she was widowed. She was about 65 years old now. Her other children had grown and moved, but her other adult son, Jeffrey, lived with her. and he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia.
Mhm.
And he would take apart her engine at night in the garage. He would set
Oh, wow.
fires. He'd throw all the food away, thinking it was poisoned, rip all the wiring out of the walls, thinking that the government was eavesdropping on him. It was one thing after another thing after another thing. And she said, Jeffrey hates police officers. He hates preachers. He hates lawyers. And there's going to come a time where I have to call 911 because there's nothing else I can do. Jeffrey becomes so out of control that I am scared. And I have to call 911, and I try not to because there's a chance you might come to my house and shoot and kill my son. But it was what she said next, Coach, that changed my career path forever. She said, but if that happens, it's okay. Because you have a family to go home to that you love, and you will never understand what it's like to live with somebody with severe mental illness. And that's how she ended her speech. And I was like, oh, heck no. Like, I got to talk to this lady. Like, because there's power. Like, there's power in story. Your guests that you bring on, they have a story, and there's power in that. And that's why you're so sought after, that people want to be here and have a voice on your platform. And I went to her. I said, Miss Owens, why would you say something like that? And she said, because there's no more help. And my true fear is that Jeffrey will die, or I will die before Jeffrey, and nobody will be there to take care of him. Wow. And besides, what are you going to do? Are you going to do something about it? And that's all I needed. That was all I needed. I said, you know what? I have no idea what, but I'm going to pull myself together, and I'm going to finish this class as strong as I can. And I'm going to join the National Alliance on Mental Illness come Monday morning, which I did. And I'm never going to miss a meeting, and I'm going to learn everything I can. I want to take this training that we got from Houston, and I want to train every single officer at San Antonio. I want to form a mental health unit. Like, I had all these grandiose ideas of what I wanted to do because of this one lady's story. And she truly gets all the credit. Like, people like, oh yeah, Ernie, you were one of the first ones. I'm like, but it wasn't me. Like, it was her. You got to give the credit where the credit belongs. And that was to a member of the community. And Coach, I needed that class at that time in my life, because after 15 years, I started to forget why I truly joined the police department. Like, was I truly there to help people like I said I was at the beginning? Because now I'm attached to a unit where you get accolades every time you find a gun or find the dope. And then it's like a bloodbath, and you go out there and you look for more and more. And what you do is you distance yourself from the community, especially when they're sending you into marginalized parts of the community where crime is higher. And instead of helping the community, I'm now driving a wedge between law enforcement and community. So that class, not only did it save my life, but it really did saved my career, because it taught me that this type of training is about human connection. And I had forgotten about that, to be honest with you.
I believe, interesting enough. And you said you were 15 years in the game at that point. And I know normally for seasoned officers, between the 12, 15 year mark, that's kind of when you've been on the teams, you've been on SWATs, you've been on SRO, you've done detective, you've been on task force, or you've done DCART or accident reconstruction, or whatever it may be called, from state to state. You've done those kind of teams, and you get to the point where, you're just there. And then to actually reinvent yourself and find a new interest and pivot, like I said before, to actually repurpose, like, wow, I can be impactful. I can learn something. Her story just changed the game for the rest of your career. And it's changing the game now because you're still in it. You're still in it, and you're doing things.
Yeah, I'm super passionate. It was funny because when this happened, it was like, oh man, look out, Ernie caught fire. What is going on with this guy? Like, he needs a mental health evaluation. Like, he wants to leave this tactical unit and go be a mental health officer. Like, what is wrong? And I'm like, yeah, I do. I truly, honestly do. But I don't know enough about it yet. A 40-hour class just begins to scratch the surface. Yeah. So I began reading books and watching documentaries and talking to the community members and going to these meetings. And then I began to, I would feel their concern. Like, I get it. I understand why you're concerned, because we're not trained to respond to you. To be honest, if you called me prior to 2003 for a mental health crisis at your house, I would show up and do you a disservice. And I don't say that because I'm ashamed of it. I say it because I'm proud of where I'm at now in my life, in my career, in my post-career in law enforcement. So I know what it did for me, and I know what it can do for other officers. So that's why I'm still I'm going to keep pushing, whether it's the training, whether it's legislation, policy, you name it. I want to always try to help members of the community because we've got that disconnect over the last few years, and we've got to get it back.
Right. And from watching the documentary that was on HBO, one of the first things that resonated with me was that when you guys highlighted the ask, tell, make point of law enforcement. And I remember, actually, not for lack of a better term, I wasn't told to that degree, but that's how we were taught. That's how we were trained. You know, you ask them, you tell them what to do, then you make them do what you need them to do to go ahead and clear that call, to alleviate that, clean up the spilled milk, basically. And then you come into mental health, and like we talked backstage, and like you talked on the documentary, is kind of you have a change of heart, you have a change of tactics, where you become more relatable, more easier to talk to, not as authoritative or perceived to be authoritative, to actually have the conversation to supply the individual of their needs.
Yeah, sometimes less is more, right? The military today, I mean, I was teaching at the DoD, the Navy's MA program, which is their police program. They still use the ask, tell, make. And I'm like, man, y'all are like 20 years behind. It seems simplistic, right? I'm going to ask you to do it until you do it, then I'm going to make you do it. But you're seeing this shift in law enforcement to more of a lead way of doing things, right? Listen, explain with equity and dignity. Less is more. The ask, tell, make, if you're still doing that antiquated way of doing it, I promise you've probably got a consistent use of force across the board for years and years. If you don't change the way you're doing things and learn how to connect better with those that are in a crisis or those that have called for your help, what are you really doing to advance or make your program more robust, right? We cannot be comfortable in our training. We can't, right? We transitions from revolvers to semi-automatics. That wasn't real fun for a lot of officers. It wasn't. I had a 686 Smith & Wesson. I love that gun, man. A flame would come out of that thing like 3 feet long. And then I had to transition to the semi-automatic. But you have to evolve. You have to evolve based on the needs of the community as well. And right now, what the community is asking for is an alternative response to crisis calls. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot of agencies look at, is building out those types of models.
Exactly. So when you started your unit, was it you and was it just the two of you who started your unit and it grew from there? Or how did that come into fruition once you actually, yes, this is what I'm doing and we're moving to full speed ahead?
Yeah, it seems like it was an overnight success, right? So the training was in 2003. The unit didn't get started till 2008. I consistently was asking to meet with a deputy chief or an assistant chief or the chief to say, hey, I've got this idea. I wanted, why don't we do a mental health unit? But in law enforcement, you're only allowed to be as smart as your rank. So if it's not their idea, it's probably not a good idea until it becomes their idea. So I had to make it become their idea. So what happened was, interesting story, NAMI was hosting a legislative breakfast. So you had a lot of state representatives and senators that wanted to hear what the agenda was going to be from the local mental health authority and the National Alliance on Mental Illness going forward. So when they go to Austin, they could start looking at draft legislation. Well, the chief was in attendance. I was there, of course, as a member of NAMI, but the NAMI president said, hey, Chief McManus, what do you think about starting a mental health unit with the San Antonio Police Department? And I thought, oh, crap. Like, I did not put him up to that. But I thought I'm going to be at the pound inventorying vehicles for the rest of my career on this one. But the chief
stars aligned for that one.
But the chief went up there and he said, yeah, actually, we're going to do that. And he looked over at me and he said, Ernie's going to be the one to head that up. He'll grab a partner and we're going to run a pilot project for 6 months. And I was like, oh my God, like, I don't even know how this is going to work. Like I had this
Uh-huh.
idea, but I'd never really thought it out.
Mhm.
So he comes back to the table. He's like, hey, just don't screw this up. All right. I'm like, yes, sir, chief.
Hmm.
So my original partner, William, me and him started, and it was just the two of us, and we would pair up together, and we had a clinician with us from the local mental health authority. So when patrol didn't have a call for us to go for, we would usually run on calls through the mobile crisis line that would come
Uh-huh.
through. So we were constantly busy. You got to think San Antonio is a city of almost 2 million people with one
Wow.
mental health unit. So we were busy.
Yeah.
So it was very quickly that we were able to expand. And within a year, we added 2 more officers and opened up a night shift. And that's when Joe from Ernie and Joe became my partner. And we
Gotcha.
took on the night shift.
Gotcha. And you say Ernie and Joe, and here, right here from the
Oh, look at that.
documentary. Yeah,
That guy in
yeah.
the back, that's a good looking guy in the back right there. I'm going to tell you what. And that unit, I forgot to mention, that unit started in 2008. So it took 5 years, Coach, from the time I got to the training, from the time the unit actually got started.
Gotcha. And then from the time that it got started, when did you guys actually become famous by being on HBO and other networks? Just basically doing your job to the fullest of your capacity.
Yeah, another great question. We started out with a little bit of local media, but then there was a writer by the name of Ann Snyder who came out from The Atlantic and wrote an article called Policing with Velvet Gloves. And catchy, right? Real catchy.
Yeah.
And she rode with us. And that's actually a picture from one of her ride alongs. So you see how we're dressed. We're dressed in just a polo, some jeans. Actually, the badge, I usually stick it underneath my shirt. Our gun is covered up, our handcuffs, so we just look like a couple of, dummies walking down the street or up to your house when we knock on your door. But what she saw was a different alternative approach from just your regular patrol officer in uniform responding to a call with very little to no mental health training. And she saw our approach to the members of the community. We used empathy and built rapport. And then the idea was to get them into treatment, divert them away from the criminal justice system, and actually get them into treatment where they could get wraparound services with continuity of care, right? And she's like, y'all are kind of like social workers, but you have a gun. Like, I don't know how to explain this, but I'm going to write this article. So she writes it. Well, that gets to Byron Pitts from Nightline to ABC News. So Byron Pitts comes out and does a ride along. And you know how it goes. You just can't make up these calls. We had one. It was a wounded warrior. She's a veteran. And she had taken an overdose and her husband couldn't get a hold of her. So we got the call and we went over there, and Joe and I actually had to kick in fact, you can watch it on YouTube on Nightline. We kicked the door in, and she had taken an overdose. We started CPR on her. EMS got there. They were able to revive her on the way to the hospital. And at the very end, Byron Pitts, he makes a couple of good points. He said, I saw 2 officers walk in, but I saw 2 human beings come out. And the idea is because that's the way it affects us. And then at the end, he says, it's very likely Ernie and Joe saved her life. And then that got tagged Ernie and Joe to the filmmaker, Jen McShane, who we received a phone call from to say, hey, I read your article. I saw the Nightline. I've been following y'all for a little bit. I want to come down and do a ride along. So I'm like, okay, sure. Come on down. So she shows up with no film crew, no sound crew. And I'm like, she's following us around with it. Yeah, she's following us with her cell phone. I'm like, man, what in the hell is this film like going to be? I should have done some research because she is an award-winning documentarian. Her last film she had done prior to this was voiced over by Liam Neeson. So I didn't know any of this, so I'm an idiot. And I'm like, but the first call we go on, Coach, we go to a group home where the individual that's living there is hearing voices for him to kill the group home manager.
Oh, wow.
So we're talking to him outside, and I'm like, are you hearing these voices now? Part of this clip is in Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops. He's like, yeah, there's knives in the kitchen. I can use something. I'm like, okay, well, I tell you what, based on what you're telling us, you've just had a change in medication. Why don't we have that reviewed and let you talk to somebody and you'll stay with us and I'll make sure that you're taken care of. He's like, all right, I'll go. And he looks over at our car. Now our car is unmarked. but it's got the hubcaps, right? So you know what it is.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll go, but I'm not going to ride in the back of a police car. I said, well, why don't you just jump up front? I'll ride in the back and Joe can drive. He's like, yeah, I'll do that. So we walk over. I pat him down real quick for weapons. He's clean. There's no issue with safety. So he jumps in the front. As I'm getting ready to get in the back, Jen McShane grabs me and goes, what are you doing? And I'm like trying to figure out her question. I'm like, does she want to know where we're going? Or I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, you're going to jump in the back behind that cage? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, well, what if he attacks Joe? And I'm like, well, that's kind of Joe's problem. Like, I'm good. Like, I don't know. And she's like, this isn't funny. Like, are you being serious? I'm like, yeah. I say, he's not under arrest. He's a patient. We're just giving him a ride, to a treatment facility to get him some help. And she goes, this would never happen. And she was from New York. Her uncle's NYPD. She's like, even the police and firefighters don't even get along there. She goes, I want to come back. I think there's a story here. And I'm like, okay, 2 white cops from Texas answering mental health calls. If you say so, whatever. There's nothing sexy. But she does, Coach. She comes back and films for 3 years.
Wow.
She films from 2016 through 2019, and then releases the film at South by Southwest in 2019 and wins the award for craft of empathy or something. I forget. It was won the film festival for that, which I had no idea what that meant. She said, you guys need to go out and get yourself some suits because we're about to go on a major film festival tour. And that's exactly what happened. City to city, all across the United States, winning the majority of every film festival we were in, which led to a Grammy nomination, 2 Emmy nominations, and an Emmy. So it was a hell of a ride.
Yeah, I bet. Congratulations to all of you involved, and congratulations on the project itself and for doing a tremendous job. I mean, just by answering the call and doing a good job, it spawns off to something that's award-winning and necessary and needed.
Yeah, and what we found out was what we were doing truly wasn't unique. It was unique in a way of the way we were dressing and responding. You had some officers out there that were responding, but in uniform. Some would show up with a clinician. It just happened to be the perfect storm of the filming process, the transition and transformation that our local mental health authority was going through, because there was complete buy-in. We were no longer siloed. A lot of places, your police don't want to work with the mental health, and mental health don't want to work with police, and it's very fragmented. Well, this framework that we were building, this collaboration, was what truly made it successful and why we became really a gold standard for years and years in San Antonio.
Gotcha. Got a LinkedIn user, and it was an awesome documentary, all meant to be. Absolutely.
Thank you, friend. Yeah, thank you.
So let me ask you, from the documentary itself, I know you've done other podcasts and other interviews for follow-ups on individuals that you dealt with then. Have you kept up with any of the individuals that were released on the documentary? And do we have any stories, positive experience that we could share? Any updates like that?
Yeah. So for those who watched the documentary, there is a scene where we get a call, we get dispatched to a young lady on a bridge who is contemplating suicide. She's on the edge, a very scary and intense moment where she wants to jump off. She's having auditory hallucinations. She's addicted to crack cocaine. She's basically given up on life. But somebody sees her and calls it in, and we respond. And it was all captured on dash cam and body camera. And it's shown in the film, where her name was Kendra. Kendra, spoiler alert, is doing good today. Thank God. And I met with her. I guess it's just, with Kendra, she's hit and miss. Because it's like life. It's life. Life has its ups and downs. And I met with her about 6-7 months ago for lunch. We usually try to meet a lot more often than that. But she was in between. She was moving around different family members and trying to get settled. But we met for lunch. I was with my wife, so my wife actually got to meet her. And then the clinician that's featured in the documentary, Amanda, who was there checking on her throughout the film, was just a few blocks away. So I called her to surprise her, say, hey, guess who I'm with? She's like, well, where are y'all at? And I told her, and she goes, I'm like 2 blocks away. So we had like this little reunion when we were having lunch, and Kendra decided she wanted to go back to school and get her GED, but she had lost her identification. So I helped her reapply to get an ID card and then start the schooling process. So last I heard, she's doing good. I'm glad we're talking about her, because now I will be calling her tomorrow and checking on her. So thank you, Coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I hope you get good news when you track her down and talk to her.
Thank you, my friend. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pause for the calls. Sergeant Be Safe has something to say, and we're going to jump right back into this interview. Stand by.
Ooh, and you fool! As we all enter this holiday season, be mindful and vigilant that this is when scammers and thieves like to take full advantage of us. It's more than just ghosts and goblins out there. There's real life monsters like Rob You Blind and Chance Wilder, ready to hurt and take advantage of kids and adults alike. Kids and parents, be mindful while out trick-or-treating, and don't accept candy from strangers. There's a lot of things out there that may look like good candy that's actually very poisonous for you. So let's be safe and only go to places that you know, and be accompanied by an adult that you trust. And that's your Halloween tip of the day to get you on your way. Ooh.
Subscribe now.
That was last year's Halloween by Sergeant Be Safe. Another Sergeant Be Safe cartoon. Hope you guys like that. The voiceovers for that are normally first responders and law enforcement officers. They don't like to give their accolades or any kind of thing, anything like that out there. But I like to give them their shine because they donate their time, they donate their voice. So make sure you guys check them out. Sergeant Be Safe has his own YouTube channel. But jumping back into this interview, we're here with Ernest Stevens, and we talked about a little bit about his HBO documentary, Crisis Cops, and the units that he had dealing with mental health and mental health crisis and situations like that. It developed over since 2008 up until currently, where he's the deputy director of the units that he has that he's in charge of, along with this book right here that you and Nick Rosario had taken. Is this a book, or would you consider this to be a guide?
Yeah, good question. I think it's a guide for law enforcement officers. We wrote this because we understand that's very difficult to get to a good quality CIT course because the average department size, officer wise, is about 25 officers on average across the United States. So it's very difficult to give up an officer's body for 40 hours to go to a training because of the overtime. So what I tried to do was really condense and at a high level, but bring in the core training values of crisis intervention training and put that in this guide. So very quick, easy read. Officers can read it, throw it in their briefcase, their book, their bag, but stay sharp on their skills, right? There's active listening skills in there. There's a federal law that I go into about EMTALA, about patients' rights, and really law enforcement, how that benefits you as an agency if you don't know how that works. Really anything, how to respond to a crisis call, where your mindset should be, all that's in the book. So we wrote it really to help the officers out there on the street that just don't have the opportunity to get that kind of training.
Gotcha. And for those who haven't read the book or have very limited knowledge on handling crisis response calls, can you give us, even if it's a hypothetical one, can you walk us through? You get a call, you know, hey, we're taking this call. You get dispatched to it. You're en route to it, and can you take a step by step through the call until you get the outcome that you're looking for? Whether it's some sort of treatment, whether it's the hospital, however it may end.
Sure. First thing I'm going to do is look at the location of the call. If the call is at a residence, the very first thing I'm going to do is hit call history, because I want to know, what was how many calls have been there in the past? When was the last call? What were the details on those calls? Try to get as much detail or information as you can. If there's a caller, I always try to call back while I'm en route to get a little bit more information, because the dispatchers and call takers are very busy. I love them, and they get me home safe every night. But there are times that maybe not all the details are in that particular key card that you need to arrive safely, right? So you just do your due diligence to try to get as much data or information or intelligence that you can upon arrival. But once you get there, truly, it depends. You've got to look at we call it a 3-minute assessment. And that is, within 3 minutes, you kind of need to judge, is this person extremely volatile and hostile? Are they more depressed and melancholy? What is the emotion? What is the emotion telling me? And then am I able to label that and then repeat it back to the person? Because they may be really, really agitated. And I say, hey, you seem really agitated. Man, I'm not agitated. I'm just frustrated. Okay, well, that does two things. It clarifies what they're feeling. And number two, it opens up the door for conversation, right? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. So you're frustrated. Could you tell me why you're frustrated? And how long have you felt this way? Right? So by utilizing your active listening skills, you'll learn something. You will get more information by listening than by talking, which seems like it's counterintuitive to police work, because when officers arrive on scene, they're large and in charge, right? Everybody shut up, be quiet. I'm in charge. This is how we're going to do this. Not so with mental health, because you're walking into a world that you're really not an expert in, right? You're an expert in scene safety, things like that. But in the world of mental health, you really need to take a step back. Distance is your friend. Get as much information as you can. Build a really good picture, paint a really good picture of what's been going on. I'd like to do it for the last 72 hours in that person's life. And the reason I use that guide is that's the information we can use in case we have to do an involuntary commitment. I want to be able to say, in the last 72 hours, these are the most recent disturbed behaviors that the individual either told me about, family members witnessed, or we were able to see while we were at the scene. That way it helps the doctors and stuff saying, hey, we showed up and they were just yelling and mad. Yeah. That doesn't really say a whole lot. Yeah. So you need to take your time, gather as much information as possible. It's vitally important that you have another officer with you, not only for cover, but that's going to be your scribe, because you need to be as focused as you can without your notepad, coach, and be really paying in and focused in on that person, asking the questions that you need answered. And then your cover officer needs to be writing down the name of the doctors, the name of the medications, because you're going to forget that stuff. I promise you. Yeah. And what you're also doing is you're focusing in on the person and not the problem, right? The problem is usually very emotionally charged. So if you can block that part out and focus on the person, what that does is that gives you the ability to now focus on connection instead of correction, right? Correction means if you do this again, you're going to jail or this or that. But connection means I'm here with you. I see you and I'm listening to you and I'm here to help you. And although you may not know me or you may not trust me, I'm going to show you with my actions that you can trust me. So it's a step-by-step process. And I think what's important for your listeners to know that are in law enforcement or first responders, medics, don't rush these calls. Yeah. You got to take your time. You just can't walk in and be like, okay, I'm here and I care about you. Like, shut up with that. No, you don't. You don't even know me. Like, let's take a few minutes. Let's get to know each other, feel each other out. It may be a little bit more of a barrier if you're in uniform, but it can still be done. Because if you look at the documentary, when Kendra was on the bridge, Joe and I were working overtime in uniform. And the first thing she said is, y'all never help me. Yeah. She meant y'all as in you, the guys wearing the uniform, not you, Ernie, personally, or you, Joe. So we had to let her know who we were, and we had to find out who she was. And it's the same thing when you're responding to these calls. Now, the outcome or the disposition of these calls, it's really dependent upon the need of that person that's in crisis. Are you able to de-escalate them? Because what you want to do is use the least amount of restriction on that person's civil rights as possible, right? You're truly falling back on constitutional policing. So what do I need? Do I need to help this person with resources, connect them to a clinician that can make an appointment for an intake, or do they meet the criteria based on danger to self, others, or mental decompensation to where they can't remain at liberty because they're a danger to themselves or others? And if so,
Right.
by statute, we have to take you in involuntarily. But what that can look like is, do you want to go in handcuffs? Because I don't think you need to. I think you, with dignity and respect, as long as you're not carrying any weapons, you're good to ride with us. And we're just going to continue talking on the way there, so I can make sure that the doctor, the clinicians know what all your concerns are. And you use what's called guided imagery. You're going to tell them what's going to happen before it happens. So as it unfolds, their anxiety level goes down. It's no different than somebody giving you directions on like how to get to a birthday party. And as you're following those directions, you're like, oh yeah, you said left here, right here, third house. Yep, there it is. Right. As you're paving your way through there, you're like, okay, yeah, I'm on the right track. Everything sounds exactly the way it was supposed to be. So I call it guided imagery to help reduce anxiety. And then the warm handoff to the clinician or the treatment facilities, just the part of it. You've got to follow up on the back end as much as possible, because I know, Coach, and just like you know where the front door of a treatment facility is to take somebody. Okay, we got that. But do we know what happens beyond the front door truly? Have we ever been in that situation? Do we know? No. And what happens at the back door? Are they just released? Like they need to know that, hey, I didn't forget about you. I'm here. What was your treatment plan and how can I help you be successful? It's difficult in smaller agencies because they just don't have the resources, but it's something that you can partner with your local mental health authority to be a part of that process.
Gotcha. Two things that you said I like about that. You like the 72, you try and get a picture of the prior 72 hours leading up to when you got the call. So you have a mental foundation of exactly to the best of your ability of what's going on. And also the follow-up after you know what's going on as soon as they're released. I know many times in this career, someone goes for 302 for whatever the reason. It was serious enough for the 302. And then you find out 2 hours later that they're released from the hospital or the facility, and you're like, where's the disconnect? What happened? And most times it's out of our hands, and you articulate it to the best you can. You write an affidavit to the best you can. You talk to a crisis co-responder to the best. They do their best, and then come to find out you're dealing with them again. This time they're even more agitated because now they feel like if you come back and you deal with them again, you're just going to waste their time, take them, drop them off, and they're going to be released again. And you're dealing with them in a more excited state.
Yeah. So one of the questions you got to ask yourself is, did I take them to the right facility? Right. Because a lot of the de facto for mental health patients seems to be an emergency room, which is not the best fit for somebody that's in a mental health crisis. Now, if you've got and they are medical emergencies, but if you've got a different type of medical emergency, maybe the emergency room is your best bet. But a lot of times these patients, they end up in the emergency room, either it's a quick turnaround, like you said, they get the Nike Express and they have to beat street, or they get transferred to another facility that's more appropriate level of care for them. And that's a whole nother process. And that takes time. And it could have totally been bypassed had you gone to the right place in the first place.
Gotcha.
So this is why it's so important to come together as a community, to bring your stakeholders together, to bring your treatment facilities together, your hospitals in the room, and say, look, we want to build out a process. What patients should we be bringing to the ER versus what patients should we be taking to a private stand-up facility? Because what you may hear is that the police department requires medical clearance before a patient can go. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say, no, they do not. If you're familiar with EMTALA, the federal law EMTALA, Emergency Medical Treatment Active Labor Act, you do not need to go get medical clearance. In fact, Attorney General back here when Greg Abbott was was the AG here, or I'm sorry, Lieutenant Governor in Texas, he ruled on that, saying you do not have to go to get medical clearance prior to going to a treatment facility, because you're bordering on violating a patient's civil rights by doing that, when they don't need medical clearance and they could have benefited from going straight to a treatment facility. So that was like, there was a lot of conversation about that. And EMTALA also covers a patient post-discharge for up to 72 hours.
Okay.
So if this patient walks out 2 hours after you brought him there and something happens, that hospital better have a real good safety plan contract in place Because if something happens, and it happened in San Antonio. We had a patient that an officer dropped off on a courtesy ride to the hospital, right? Didn't do any paperwork. Hey, just go in there and tell them you're not feeling good. Well, after they waited in the lobby for several hours, they walked up to the top floor of the parking garage and jumped off.
Wow.
With the hospital saying, well, the police department's at fault because they should have come in and did the paperwork. Well, the police department's saying, hey, we transferred to a higher level of care, so now it's on you. And you have all this can be avoided if we have these conversations early on and we make sure that we're not doing what's convenient for us. We need to be doing what's right for the patient, because that's who this is truly about. And until we redefine what safety means in law enforcement, right? Safety is not the absence of crime. Safety must be the presence of well-being. And that means that of our community as well. Are we really going to make any changes moving forward in this profession?
Good points. Good points. Very eloquently explained. Shayla's here. Exactly. The ED is not always the right place. Yep. And yep. Yes, collaboration is key. I say it all the time. Get the right people in the room. Yep. Absolutely.
Shayla's on fire. Yep. She knows it.
We have this debate often. I'm not going to put too much out there, but as a law enforcement official, bringing someone to the hospital, and we're like, okay, we've done our protocols, at least the way that we were trained to do. And then once we do the paperwork, we do all the sign-ins, and we drop them off to the facility at the hospital. The hospital then, at least for us, is our next step. Drop them up, then they take hold in whatever angle it needs to branch off to. And from our perspective, it's like they drop the ball, because then regardless on whatever paperwork is done, we assume that yes, after we do the paperwork, it's on them to follow up. And then when we see that individual is released and back home and upset because they either had to walk home or find a ride or pay money to get back home, then they're 10 times more pissed off than what they were. And we're blaming the hospital. The hospital's blaming us, kind of like in the situation, a watered down version of the situation that you just explained.
Yeah, that's where a shared language really comes into play. And that happens by bringing people together, because you got to understand that an emergency room, a mental health patient is going to require a one-on-one. Well, you don't have the staffing in an ER to provide a nurse to do a one-on-one. When you've got gunshot victims coming in, motor vehicle accidents, patients coming in. So yes, there is a thought process there. I'm sure I'm not speaking for the hospitals of, hey, we need to turn that bed over kind of quick because we don't really have the staffing to meet that need. And physically, they're not bleeding out. Their blood pressure is good. They're triaged okay. We'll give them a resource to follow up, and then out they go. Well, what happens with that patient? See, nobody wants to help me. Nobody cares about me. And they leave there and they're upset, and then they get a bill, right? Yeah. So you can understand the frustration from both entities, where the police department's like, hey, we did our thing. And I used to say the same thing, right? Hey, I'm just doing my job. I did what I was supposed to do. But did I do the best I could have done for the person I was trying to serve? Right. And I didn't know that answer until we had other facility CEOs come in and say, actually, that patient would have been more appropriate. If they're a veteran, come to the VA, because if you take them to your local ER and they get screened and seen by a doctor, and then they write them some prescriptions and give it to them and then release them, they cannot take those prescriptions to the VA and fill them because the VA didn't write the prescription. So now they got to start all over. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. You've got to be able to put the round peg in the round hole, or else this is why the patient gets so frustrated. I did what the officer said. I went and got help. They gave me a prescription, but now they won't fill my prescription. And, you can imagine how frustrating that must be from a community member. So this is where, and I never knew any of this as a police officer. This is part of the civil part of the law, which we have a very small part of. It's like, no, if this is not a criminal matter, we don't get involved. I got taught that very early on by my FTOs, right? Yep. But we do deal with the civil part of this law, because an involuntary commitment is a civil commitment. But I didn't know the processes, and I didn't know what facilities I should be using, or where to navigate a patient based on age, gender, whether they were pregnant. I mean, all this plays a part. So this is why it's so important. Hey, get your agency to sit down and let's have the hard discussion of, hey, we want to build a robust system that benefits the community first and us second, right? That's what it has to come down to, and make sure that we're getting the patient navigated to the right place.
Yep. There you go. Yeah. You just got a supporter. There you go. You get it. Yep. That's a conversation that yeah, you won that one. But it makes perfect sense. All jokes aside, I'm being funny because I know her and I know exactly what you're saying. But seriously, it makes perfect sense exactly what you're saying. Where you go around teaching CIT or trainings for mental health, emotional intelligence, or correct me if I'm wrong. But where have you gone, or how often do you go around doing trainings for that? And what kind of departments? Is it all law enforcement, or do you deal also with crisis responders? Do you deal with EMTs? Do you deal with firefighter or any kind of first responders?
Yeah. So when I left San Antonio, the training there, whenever we held a training, the average class size was about 75. And that was a mixture of about 13 to 14 different agencies, to include your transit police, your magistrate guards that are going to be there at intake, your school police, your different agencies, your different smaller municipalities, along with firefighters and paramedics. Those were usually what the class was made up of, which was an interesting mix. Because if you've ever put a role play together with an officer and a medic, like, it's strange at first. Because a medic will walk right in, right past the two guns, the drugs, and the hooker that ran out the back door, and get on one knee and touch the patient and be like, "Hey, I'm here to help you. I'm gonna check your vitals." Meanwhile, the officer's like, "Hold on, man, get back here. There's guns and knives and dope all over there. Like, settle down." So they learned from each other. What we learned was the medics and the firefighters were very good communicators, because they weren't relying on anything on their utility belt, right? They didn't have anything.
Yeah.
They had a pair of scissors they carry in their pocket. Where the officers were a lot more tactful. They would stand. It was almost like, hey, you got to let your guard down a little bit. Like, I'm not saying don't lose your tactics, but there's things we do called a tactical compromise. There's times where I may sit down with somebody, but my partner's going to stand up. He's not going to let me get hurt, or she's not going to let me get hurt. But in order for me to truly try to connect with somebody, I might have to get down at their level and speak to them face to face. If they're down and they got their hands in their face and they're crying, I don't want to be standing up talking over them. Yeah. So there's a mixture there. So when I retired, I did a lot of traveling, teaching CIT, but these classes are 40 hours long. And that meant I was away from my family for a good 6-7 days at a time, which I'm not good with, man. I'm a homebody. I love being at home with my family. So that was a difficult strain. When I took the position at the Council of State Governments at the Justice Center, I got to now oversee the law enforcement portfolio. So now when I travel, and it's still quite a bit, I'm actually going to be in Kentucky in a couple of days, teaching out there to their jail staff and their jailers, which is a different population. I'm glad we don't forget about our brothers and sisters in corrections. Very important part of the process. I go out there and I really look now more at policy practices. We look at state legislation on ways that we can help build a good framework for them. We look at federal dollars that are available to help them as seed funding to begin these programs. And then how do we make these programs sustainable? Because right now, a lot of agencies, counties and cities, health departments got those ARPA dollars, and they threw a lot of money into mental health, but that's going to start drying up here in the next year or two. And then what happens to these programs? Do they go away like they always do? Or are you building them out to be sustainable? Because now you're looking at the data. Hey, the patient that used to call 4 or 5 times a month, now we got them in treatment because of these programs, and they're not calling anymore. In fact, we've put them into a lower level of care, and they're doing actually very well. And you can put a cost analysis to this to show you, if you fund these programs up front, in the long run, they're going to save your taxpayers a ton of money because these programs work. And it's everything from the intercept model, the sequential intercept model, which I'm sure that you're very familiar with, from 0 through 7, from the time the call comes in, 911, to the time the person re-enters into the community from jail or correction. You've got to cover that whole span. and build out these types of programs to ensure that people are going to be successful.
Gotcha. Thank you. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, stand by. We're going to jump to a certain Be Safe cartoon, and we're going to come right back. Stand by.
Hey, bro, we got next game.
Bro, what's going on?
We got this pickup game we're about to get started.
I got a bag full of treats.
Come on, man. Don't nobody want your treats.
Treats? What kind of treats?
Vapes, pills, and drugs.
Whoa, what do you mean?
Don't tell your parents.
Looks like I'm right on time. What's going on here?
There's Sergeant Be Safe. I gotta get a picture.
Oh man, Be safe.
Treacherous Tony, we know you're up to no good. What's in that bag right there?
What bag?
Sergeant, be safe. It's his drugs. He tried to sell it to us.
Thanks, big guy, for letting me know.
You're welcome.
You kids get out of here. Treacherous Tony, drop the bag and come over here.
You'll have to catch me first.
Don't run, or you're gonna get tased.
All right. Taser, taser, taser.
All right. I give up. I won't do it again.
That's right, your drugs will be disposed of. So put your hands up. You're coming with us.
I'm sick of going to jail.
Listen up, kids. Don't use drugs, vapes, or pills. They're not good for you. And that's your tip of the day to get you on your way.
And we are back. I hope you guys like that cartoon. It's one of my favorite ones because Treacherous Tony gets tased. That's actual audio from one of our cadets in the academy who was that's actually the sound of someone really being tased in a controlled setting. So that I got to get that. That person may or may not be on the link right now. I don't know. I'm not going to call you out, but you know who you are. And that's one of the very funny ones that we have on there. I enjoy that one.
That is cold, because if you'd have recorded me when I got tased, it'd have sounded a whole lot different. I'd have been, I heard like a high pitched scream.
Yeah, I got tased in 2006 with the department I was with. It was I got voluntold, it was somewhat mandatory, and so the chief at the time asked me if I wanted the alligator clips or if I wanted to get shot. And I said, I want to get shot, because at least I was thinking in my mind that I would have one split second before the probes hit me, that some of that 5-second juice would be used up. But no, I ended up with two, I don't even know what they were, bruises on my back because of the darts and falling to the ground. And it wasn't fun.
Well, good on you, man. Way to step up.
Yeah. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're back in the interview. We got Ernie Stevens here. Ernie, can you give us an update on what your future goals or future endeavors that you have planned in working with mental health and individuals in the state of Texas or throughout the United States?
Yeah, so right now, again, at the Justice Center, we work with all 50 states in the United States. Mm-hmm. And what our primary job is in my division is we are kind of like subcontractors for the Department of Justice. So if you're an agency and you have received a Connect and Protect grant, which is funding to set up a co-response unit, that's usually an officer and a clinician that ride together, and you've received this grant, then we will come in and be your technical assistance advisor. So I've got coaches on my team, the best, who will come in, and the first year you have your planning phase. So they will help you go through a planning and implementation guide to build out what this program is going to look like and how it's going to operate. And during that time, you get your first set of funding. The next 2 years, because it's a 3-year grant, is your implementation phase. So that's now boots are on the ground and this program is moving. And my coaches check in monthly for an hour call with you. If you need a site visit, we will come out and actually visit your site. If you think, hey, we're having some problems, we have a disconnect over here, we don't know how to figure it out, we'll try to handle it via some calls. But if we need to come out, we'll come out. A couple of my coaches were in South Colorado today helping an agency work through some issues. So in addition to that, like I said, if it touches law enforcement, for example, I'm working on a project right now where we're getting ready to do a 3-state study on disparities in traffic stops. So why do we see these disparities in these particular states? Is there legislation on the books in that state that prohibit racial profiling? If so, you get the bipartisan infrastructure legislation funding. You can get that as long as you have that law on the books and you collect the data on the traffic stops that show any type of racial profiling. If you start seeing the disparities and we can come in and help look for that, then it's not, hey, shame on you. You're stopping more black and brown people than you are white, or you're searching more, or you're arresting more. It's, hey, how do we mitigate this from happening in the future? And then we come in and we help you with your policy to help kind of mitigate those disparities to show that you're using an equitable lens when you're building out your policy as far as what you're doing in your community. So it could be anything that touches law enforcement. But the majority, I would say a good 70% of what I do is really helping agencies uplift and start these types of programs.
Gotcha. You're doing tremendous work. Keep up the good work. I know if you're like you said, you're very passionate. Obviously, you're very passionate doing it because you're still in the game. So,
yeah, I mean, the hair's turning gray, man. But I'm gonna keep on going. I got a lot of energy. I do have the passion. I love what I do. People ask me, "Hey, do you miss law enforcement?" I'm like, well, a little. I did 28 years. I'm still very involved with law enforcement today. Just at a different level. Which I enjoy because, there for those not in law enforcement, there's some politics that go involved in your day-to-day operations and things that you have to do. And it's good, to be in an organization now where, you're bipartisan, you're out there truly just trying to uplift communities and help them be successful.
Yeah. And you said the hair's turning gray. So, hey, brother, just be happy that you still have some.
Man, it's hanging on.
Yeah, Ernie, it was great to have you on the show. And through the course of the conversation, I may have forgot to ask you something, or I may have jogged your memory on something that you want to put out there. Right now, the floor is yours. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
Well, one thing that we're seeing at the national level as well is an uptick in agencies trying to put together wellness programs for their agency. And I'm very passionate about that as well. We just held a 3-part webinar at the Justice Center about building out a culture of wellness. If you have an opportunity to visit our website, the CSG website, those videos will be posted here fairly soon once they're all finalized. Please be sure to reach out and look at funding opportunities through the Bureau of Justice Assistance, the BJA, on how to get yourself some funding to start up these programs. I'm very excited to work with these agencies and help guide them in a way that, the officers no longer feel inadequate when they're having a bad day or scared to ask for help. I think true authenticity is putting your fears aside and doing the hardest thing and asking for help when you truly need it, because the community needs you. They need law enforcement now more than ever, but they need you healthy and well.
Yeah. Good point. Good information. I did the wrong thing. There we go. Got you back. I hit the wrong button. Sorry about that. Yeah, good point. Good information. And we have your website in the comment section, and we have it scrolling below. So therefore, if you guys have any other questions, either that we're watching now or watching the replay, you can put it in the comment section. We'll address it accordingly, or you can reach out to him by way of his website. And Shayla said you're doing amazing work. Absolutely.
Thank
I
you.
agree. Yep. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you guys for tuning into a back-to-back episode to yesterday and today of Black and Blue, where we go live weekly. We go live at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And when we go live with the first responder or a law enforcement officer, and we talk about their trainings, their experiences, and their publications. And no, it doesn't matter whether they're rookie season or retirees. So if you're looking for more information on any of those topics or any of those genres, this is your place. If you're looking to see how we humanize the badge, how we interact, the things that we do while on patrol or while at work, things that we do while we're off. This is your place. If you're kind of curious, if you're a youngster getting out of high school, graduating from college, getting out of the military, and you just have one toe dipped in the curiosity pool of water of law enforcement, this is your platform where you can ask your questions, where you can do your research and see if this noble profession is for you or just to see what it's about. So make sure you guys tag, like, and share, and let your friends know about it. Keep continuing watching this platform. We have a lot of fun putting on these shows, and I have a lot of fun meeting the guests and bringing this information on to you. And Ernie, again, thank you for making yourself available. I'm looking forward to watching you flourish. It's a true honor to have you on the show. Like I said, when we were backstage, I was starstruck to have you. And when you said yes so easily, you were very easy to work with. When we had to reschedule, everything worked out perfectly, and I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you, Coach. Like I said, your platform is saving lives, man. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Yep, absolutely. Thank you, guys. This is Coach Clee. I'm your motivational speaker, your empowerment coach, your author, and your favorite baker's favorite baker, saying 10-4 over and out. You guys be safe and take care of each other.
Here's my chance. No cameras, no security systems, nothing. I'm about to own this house.
Rob, you blind. We know you're in there.
Oh no! It's Be Safe.
The house is surrounded. Come out with your hands up.
I'm not coming out.
Okay, I'm sending in Kraken.
Release the Kraken.
Dance with my dogs in the nighttime.
Ah! Kraken bit me.
I tried to warn you.
We'll get you the proper medical attention, but you're going to have to surrender and come out with your hands up in that house that does not belong to you.
Hold on. I'm coming out.
Don't be all day. We'll send Kraken back in.
My leg hurts now, and I have to go back to jail.
Well, this is what happens when you illegally enter a property that does not belong to you, also known as burglary.
Ooh.
And there you have it. Rob, you blind, you're coming with me. Hopefully you learn to respect other people's property and not break into homes. And that's your tip of the day to get you on your way.